And in the best segue ever, let's talk about financial results. But Capcom have actually been smashing it recently. I think like the way Capcom have been going, everyone hopes Konami has a resurrection in gaming similar to Capcom. Don't think it's going to happen. But they've been smashing it, and some of the highlights are just around how big the Monster Hunter franchise has become. So in particular with Monster Hunter World, that's like contributed, I think, 1/3 of the sales of the Monster Hunter series in total. And now that series is well over 100 million units sold. So it's actually... Oh, am I getting that right? I might be getting that wrong, actually.
No, so...
I'm fact-checking myself.
No, so that was closer, I think, like 50 million. So
yeah, it's like 60 or something like that.
Yeah,
That's right.
Resident Evil was over 100 million units.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah, I'm actually thinking about... Because Monster Hunter World is their best-selling game, but that's like the whole series in general is like 65 million.
Which is still pretty high, considering that game was up until World was actually fairly niche in the West. So
yeah, no, definitely, and yeah, it's just like it's good to see a studio doing this well. And then it actually triggered me because like they were talking about Street Fighter, like this Street Fighter Duel game. Have you heard anything about this?
No, I assume it's a card game of sorts. Oh no, they've already got one of those. It's obviously some kind of mobile thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a mobile game. So I actually checked it out on YouTube because I'm like, I've never even heard of this, and it's launching in mainland China this month, and it looks really good, man. Like it looks really good, like legit. Like I don't play games on mobile. I think I've said this many times, but I don't know, just the love that I have for Street Fighter as a series, it just looks very good, and like people are talking about it and saying it's actually a really, really good game. And yeah, just like, you know, the one thing about Capcom, from everything they're saying and sort of projecting out there, like they are just going to keep hammering all of their core series. So I'm sure we'll start to hear about Street Fighter 6 soon. You know, Resident Evil 8 Village, you know, that's coming out, should be next year. Monster Hunter Rise is coming out in March, and I'm sure they'll probably announce Monster Hunter World for next gen, probably next year, and then maybe release in 2022. Just feels like they're just on overdrive right now, Capcom.
So I mentioned how pumped I am, especially now, for Monster Hunter Rise.
Yeah, same. I'm definitely getting that game.
After watching that gameplay, that made me realize this game, I think, is going to be massive, like huge. Like, I'm actually I didn't even think about how big this game. I reckon it's going to be huge.
Well, you know, they've already said, so it's coming out in March, and I think it's only got like a day or two in terms of that month, because it's coming out near the end of March. And Capcom have already said to the market they're expecting at least 1 million sales in March, which translates to like they're expecting basically 1 million sales on launch, which, you know, that's massive for any game. Like, doesn't matter how big your game is. Like, that's big when you're already selling 1 million units.
With the Switch install base, and I just think this game, like, watching it, like, when they first announced this game, you know, as part of those partner directs or whatever they were, you're like, okay, you know, it looks a bit pared down, looks closer to, like, you know, maybe the handheld stuff. Then when I watched that gameplay, while graphically it's, you know, it's a Switch game, doesn't look like World. It's still like they've done such a good. It's like a perfect blend of the two. It's like everything, like the combat looks super dynamic and everything, and you're like, man, I have a feeling this is going to be like one of the biggest selling games of next year.
Yeah, I think so too, and it's hard to get exact numbers on how many units they've sold in terms of the Switch, but from memory, it's like, you know, in the order of like 60 million from memory. I probably shouldn't be throwing figures out there if I'm not really sure, but you know, and the install base is just growing and growing and growing, and it's always done well portably. Monster Hunter, like the prior ones would still be selling like 8 million units, but just given how popular the Switch has been, especially in Japan, it's the number one console ever there.
And it's
Yeah,
the
I think
it's
you're right. It's going to be massive.
it's the next Monster Hunter game since World blew up. And while it's not on other platforms, so it doesn't have like the huge install base of the PS4 and everything to benefit
Yeah,
from it, it's got the huge Switch install base, which is pretty damn big. So it's kind of like
yeah,
makes up for that, you know. And
yeah,
and
and also
people
like,
people are screaming out for a new Switch game at this point. You know, we don't
yeah,
have that many new titles,
no,
big titles coming down on the
and
way.
people also, for whatever reason, on Switch, I don't know what the attach rate is currently on the Switch, but they just have a propensity to buy games on the Switch. You know, like look at the best the best selling game this year seems to be not FIFA, but it seems to be Animal Crossing. Like they haven't released all the numbers yet, but that game, even just on a physical sales, is comparable to all the games out there on a physical plus digital. So, and there's a lot of people who bought it digitally. Um, so you know, people like it moves units like the Switch. It's just a very engaging platform for people, and I don't know, man. I know like you're gonna think I'm nuts, but I really have this funny feeling, and this is not based on rumors or any BS articles that are out there. I still feel like there's a sneaky chance that they'll launch or announce like a Switch, you know, whatever, Switch 4K, Switch Pro, whatever you want to call it, as a bundle with Monster Hunter Rise. And maybe it will come out a month or two after Monster Hunter
I think it's
Rise.
a good
But
prediction. I really do, because we've heard some of it's been debunked, but there's been some that seem semi credible. A lot of rumors about that,
yeah, and you know how I hate rumors, man. Like, because to
and
me,
that's why we haven't
you know,
covered it.
yeah, and look, I'm just basing it on time, which is like Nintendo. What have they done with their own consoles? Because don't forget, they've done revisions on consoles before, and then handheld. They've always done revisions on handhelds. I just think you know we're at the time period where you know all of the big manufacturers revise their consoles. You know we're due for that right now. Pandemic might have pushed some of it back potentially, but yeah, I don't think that they'll release it on launch, which is I've just checked 26th of March 2021, but I really could see it like May. Like in May 2021, here's the new Switch and here's Monster Hunter Rise, and look how good it looks now. It looked great when it launched. Because by the way, you know, one thing that people keep on asking them is that the actual footage of the game whenever they're showing this gameplay footage? Because people aren't believing it. They're thinking it's like, you know, proving that there's a Switch Pro, but you know, they've come out to say, no, it is running on the Switch when you see that footage. So it looks awesome. And I originally had this game in a category of like Xenoblade, where it's like, I'll wait until the new Switch comes out and play it. But everything I understand about Monster Hunter, it's kind of a game that you would just keep coming back to, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So yeah, it's probably worthwhile just cracking on, starting with it, and then when the new Switch comes out, which I'll definitely buy on day one, you know, just continue on, and it'll just look even better. So it's just an upgrade. But yeah, no, Capcom, you know, big developer of my childhood. I'm really glad that they're doing well, and you know, they're honestly producing a lot of great games at the moment. You know, depending on what franchise you like, they're kicking goals, so it's always good. And speaking of another person who likes to